This is the second video on the muscles of the arm. In the first video, we did the muscles of the upper arm. That's the big strong part. And this time we're going to do the muscles of the forearm, which the forearm is generally not as strong as the upper arm, but it has a lot of ability for fine motor control because the hand is at the end of it. Let's review the orientation. This is the proximal end. This is the distal end. This is the dorsal side. And if we flip it over, this is the ventral side. So let us begin by taking a look. Let me move this in a little bit because we're not going to be looking at the whole arm now, but just at the forearm. Okay? And the forearm, I want to start with a very special muscle, special to me because of a student that I had. This muscle right here is called the brachioradialis muscle. The brachioradialis muscle. Now let me tell you about the student. His name was Eric Hopkins, and he had the biggest brachioradialis muscle that I'd ever seen. And I started asking him about what he did, and he was a rock drummer. That brachioradialis muscle, when you bang those drums in a rock band, it gets big. The other time it can get very big, I've seen it big on motorcycle riders. So that's the brachioradialis muscle. Oh, let me say one more thing. We're going to look at the dorsal side first. Those are the extensor muscles, and the ventral side is going to be the flexor muscles. I hope that makes sense to you, because if you flex your fingers, you're using the muscles on the ventral side of your forearm. If you extend your fingers, you're using the muscles on the dorsal side of your forearm. Okay? So we start out with this Eric Hopkins muscle, as I like to call it, the brachioradialis. And then we're going to come to the extensor. This is the brachioradialis. The extensor, see, it's an extensor digitory, extensor carpi radialis longus. Wow, that's a mouthful. The extensor carpi radialis longus. But it's an extensor, that's the main thing, right next to the brachioradialis. Then we come to the extensor carpi radialis brevis. That would be this smaller one in here. Extensor carpi radialis longus, and extensor carpi radialis brevis, and then the extensor digitorum, and then the extensor digiti minimi, and then finally to the extensor carpi ulnaris when we're all the way over here. See, where we are right now is on the ulnar side, the underneath side. Remember I told you the ulna is when you put your elbows on the table, then your ulna is on the table because it's underneath. But let's review those again. This is the what? The brachioradialis, and then this is the extensor carpi radialis longus, the extensor carpi radialis brevis, and then this is the extensor digiti minimi, and then finally we come to the extensor carpi ulnaris. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm trying to look too many ways at one time. Okay, so we'll review those when we come back, because now we want to look at the ventral side. And the ventral side, we've got, this is the pronator teres, the pronator teres. Remember what pronation is palms down, and supination is palms up. If that contracts, it turns your palm down. Oops, having trouble. Sorry about the logistics of this, okay? So maybe that'll help. This is the, what is this? The pronator teres. It's on the on the ventral side of the arm. It's going to supinate your hand. Then we come to a bunch of flexors, which will make your fingers go up. Flexor carpi radialis, and then we come to palmaris longus. Okay, palmaris longus, and then we finally come to the flexor carpi ulnaris, and see we're on the ulnar side now. You can't see that, but we're down to the flexor carpi ulnaris. Ulnaris muscles will be down toward the pinky, and radial muscles will be up here. Flexors will be on the ventral side, and extensors will be on the dorsal side. Okay. Now I want to show you one interior muscle, and I think this is the piece I got to take. Yeah, this muscle right here. This is on the dorsal side. It's the antagonist to that pronator teres. It's the supinator muscle. The supinator. That's a deep muscle. I had to take this piece off to show you that. Okay. Now, let's also just take a brief look, because we're here. Look at the complication of the muscles, the very detailed muscles. There's so many muscles and so many bones and so many joints in the hand, okay? And that especially around the thumb, but even around each of the fingers. So we'd be negligent if we didn't point that out when we were in this region of the body. If you take a course or a study in occupational therapy, that's about fine motor control, because it's rehabbing patients who have had strokes and accidents involving their fine motor coordination, so that they could do little things that we take for granted, like dress ourselves every day, and to also be able to prepare and eat our own food. Those are miracles that we take for granted, but we are that living miracle every day. So let's review what we've seen about the muscles of the forearm, and let me get myself oriented. Orientation's always the hard thing. We're starting on the dorsal side. This muscle right here is the Eric Hopkins muscle. Okay, you can see it there, and it is a muscle that rock drummers develop very, very, very completely. Okay, then we're on the dorsal side of the hand, so these are all going to be extensors. And in order, the extensor, extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor digiti minimi, and then finally extensor, oops, why do I keep dropping it down there? Let me do it in order again. This is the brachioradialis, extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor digit. Wow, I can't keep it in the screen. I'm very sorry about this. Okay, let's try it one more time. As they say, one more time. Practice makes perfect. Brachioradialis, extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor digiti minimi, and extensor carpi radialis. Just in that order, coming around the arm. I'll try to make it clear when test time comes. If I asking any of those, I'll be careful. Then on the ventral side, we have the pronator teres. Okay, and after the these are going to be flexors. This is flexor carpi radialis, because we're at the thumb right up there. Remember, radial here, ulna down at the little pinky. So that's pronator teres, extensor carpi ulnaris, and then radialis. I said it backwards. then palmaris longus, and then finally flexi carpi ulnaris. So pronator teres, flexor carpi, let's see, we're at the thumb, so that would be radialis. Then we come to the palmaris longus. Then we come to the flexor carpi ulnaris, because we're on the bottom. Radialis, ulnaris on the bottom. See where we're at the screen is inverting it. That's why it gets me mixed up sometimes. I'm looking back and forth between the screen. But pronator teres, then flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay, and also if we take this piece off back here, here's the supinator muscle, which is the antagonist to the pronator teres. And then don't forget all the muscles of the hand. That's the ventral side of the hand and the dorsal side of the hand.